what's up. Been putting off this video, I think out of fear, but the only way out of fear is through it. So I'm going to share my first ayahuasca experience. I have everything typed up on my laptop, so I'm going to be reading that because I don't think explaining it off the top of my head will do the journey any justice, so I just have it all planned out right here. So I typed most of this up while I was sleep deprived. A couple days later, after the experience, this happened September 13th, and it's almost been a month now. And I don't know, something kept telling me inside to just record this video because I need to stop putting things off. Anyway. So I'm going to read it now. Thursday, September 12th. I was at my friend's place. During dinner, we talked about ayahuasca, and I mentioned how I've always wanted to try it, but I'm going to let the opportunity come to me rather than going out of my way to find it. Well, the next day, while I was at my catering gig, my close friend called as she was preparing for her own ceremony. She told me she'd ask if there'd be any spots left. Lo and behold, the organizer of the ceremony sent me an email with all of the info I needed to prepare for it. I couldn't believe it. I was literally manifesting my thoughts right before my eyes. I had about 6 hours to prepare. I had to gather wildflowers, find white clothes at a thrift store, run to the grocery store to buy snacks to share, withdraw cash from my bank account, douse myself in basil water. I managed to get all of this done and squeezed in an hour-long nap somehow. We were all instructed to get there at 8 p.m. On my way there, I noticed that I felt so much more excitement than nervousness, and I tried to be free from expectation. Once I got there, I realized it was at a community center. There were 3 shamans from Brazil preparing the event. About 10 people were already there. Some were mingling, setting up their space, and others were meditating. I set up my spot, sat, and meditated. It's close to 9 now, and all 35 of us were seated in a circle. We were all purified outside, came back inside, and begun the ceremony as we all got in line to drink our first cup. It had this rich, deep, bitter, and slightly sour chocolatey taste. It was actually better than I expected. After I downed it, I got back to my seat, and by my surprise, I didn't feel anything just yet. They put on some music, some man talking about the ascension, how humanity is going through a huge shift in consciousness, how we will ultimately manifest heaven on earth. It was really moving. The shamans began to beat their drums and chant. It allowed me to go deeper into a trance state. Maybe about 20 minutes in, I had some closed-eye visuals of really intricate geometric patterns folding into each other and spacey stuff. It was quite nice. Most of us got up and danced a bit. I was really feeling myself at this point, feeling the music, the people I was with, a sense of freedom and connectedness as I tuned into my inner child, allowing her to express in the form of movement. Apparently I was like jumping up and down. After the ceremony, this girl went up to me and told me that she really enjoyed watching me dance. We eventually laid down on our backs with our heads pointed towards the center altar. The shamans came around and administered sananga. Visionary eye drops. This is from a website I found. They're visionary eye drops extracted from a shrub in the Amazon rainforest, said to reset your energetic field, increase spiritual insight, detoxify the body, among other things. Certain tribes in the Amazon would use this to sharpen their night vision while hunting. I was excited, although I had no idea what to expect, when one of the shamans got to me, told me to close my eyes as she placed 3 drops in each eye. I honestly didn't know what they were doing. I was not prepared for this. She told me to open them and shined a purple light across my face. The moment I opened them, I went into shock, not expecting how much of a burning sensation they would cause. I began chanting to the music, ah-ee-oh, and gyrating my hips up and down as I cried out of excruciating pain for 5 minutes or so. Oh my god. I read through it and actually appreciate the pain for what it was, as it forced me into the present moment. It definitely did. Indeed. I would do it again. Yeah, it was time for the next cup after an hour or so. I sat back down after drinking it. I really felt it this time. Soon enough, I found myself rocking back and forth on my elbows and knees as the Mother Vine's energy worked her way through my body, triggering all of the suppressed emotions I've ever accumulated and releasing themselves in the form of laughter, tears, screeching, moaning, vomiting, and banging my fists and toes on the ground. I felt like a helpless baby, but most importantly, I felt incredibly safe and comforted knowing that I could express these emotions safely and with acceptance. I also found that the drum beats acted as rhythmic patting on my back to release suppressed fears, worries, and doubts, much like burping a baby. All these fears came up one by one to be confronted. I laughed at how absurd and far from the truth they all were. So I listed a bunch of sorry, I just drank a bunch of apple cider and I'm like burping it up. Truths and fears that came up. I just listed a bunch that I discovered that night. I am self-conscious and afraid to fully be myself because I haven't fully accepted who I am. I'm still carrying past trauma from my upbringing. How I was treated as a little girl was unfair. I felt her pain, her frustration, anger, and sadness as these emotions worked their way through my body. Sex is a sacred act that I need to have more respect for. I keep compromising myself and my energy for other people, acting a certain way for their approval and acceptance so that they would like me. I'm terrified of rejection and not being accepted for who I truly am, which keeps me from fully expressing myself. I'm afraid to express how I truly feel because when I am vulnerable, in a vulnerable, raw, and honest state, I'm more open to attack, rejection, and ridicule. Some more positive and uplifting truths I came across that night were, I love my strong, beautiful body. I'm worthy and I deserve everything I want. I am loved and will always be loved by the Creator. And the most important thing is love. Everything that came up was merely a reminder, everything I already knew internally. The Mother Vine just made these truths more clear and undeniable. Then it was time for the rapé. Rapé is a very fine and dry dust made of tobacco bark from medicinal trees and other herbs. It's administered or blown into the nostrils with a special blow type made of bamboo or bone called tepi. Just put a picture right here, just so y'all know what it looks like. This blow is quite forceful and not specifically pleasant. It can be rather shocking. And yeah, it was pretty fucking shocking for me anyway. Yeah, so the intense blow immediately focuses the mind, stops the chattering, opens the entire freed mind space for your intentions. This is from a website I found. This helps release emotional, physical, and spiritual illnesses and eases negativity and confusion, enabling a grounding of the mind. Shamans use rapé to realign with their energy channels and with their higher self and to intensify their connection with the world and the universe. It also detoxifies the body and cleans out all mucus, excess mucus, toxins, and bacteria. Rapé is a cleansing medicine, so after taking it, you may experience side effects such as vomiting, sweating, and diarrhea. I actually didn't know about this before it was administered. Apparently it was in the email, and I skimmed through the list of medicinal things, but I didn't know that I was going to be experiencing all of the things that they mentioned on that list, so I kind of skimmed through it. And I didn't really know what was in store when I lined up to get this administered. Which, it happened the way it needed to happen. And I kind of actually really like the fact that I didn't have expectations for this whole thing. I kind of just allowed the experience to happen. I just like put all my trust in these shamans because they seem legit. And I don't know, maybe some people might think that's like a naive thing to do, but I think I was glad because like nothing got to my head really. I wasn't like overthinking anything. So where am I? So yeah, so when it was time for the rapé, I had no idea what was in store, but I got in line with my purge bucket to have it administered. The shaman asked, light, medium, or strong? I said strong, because why not? I like to go big or go home. She dumped like a ton of powder into her hand. And so she blew it up my nostril. It felt like it enveloped my entire brain and then my entire being. I immediately began coughing and spitting it out into my bucket. I stumbled back to my seat, losing touch with this dimension with every step. I immediately began sweating profusely and vomiting violently into my bucket. I was on my hands and knees for the next 5 minutes, purging what felt like all accumulated traumas of my past, my ancestors, and the entire world. I felt like the universe was using my body as a vehicle to confront and then purge an incredible amount of fear and darkness in myself and in the collective. That's what it felt like, honestly. Eventually, I stumbled towards the bathroom as I felt my stomach rumble. I shut the light off as it was way too bright. Felt my way into a stall. It was like completely pitch dark in this bathroom, no windows. This is a little graphic, but I pulled my skirt down and emptied the contents of my entire stomach out. I basically sat on the toilet for what seemed like an hour, going back and forth between vomiting, spitting out mucus, defecating, sweating, all that good stuff. Every movement made me want to throw up, so I sat for a while with my head down between my arms on the toilet. It was the most physical discomfort I've ever dealt with in my life. But oddly enough, there were moments in between the purging where I felt an incredible sense of reverence and gratitude for the fact that I got to experience all this in the first place. Utter peace rushed through me despite feeling like I was on the verge of death. It was these moments where I realized that nothing is truly unbearable so long as you accept and surrender to what is happening rather than judge and resist. And if there was anything that I learned that night, like that was the main thing. The more you resist pain, the more you judge it as being bad, the more it has control over you and the more painful it becomes because you're so focused on that. You're intensifying the pain and discomfort when really all you have to do, not like it's easy, but you have to shift your focus and perceive it as just a very intense sensation. Not good or bad, just like it's just there. And what I realize is that when you just accept the pain that's happening, the discomfort, and sit with it and don't judge it, you just feel at peace because you're no longer identifying with it. It no longer has control over you. And so that was like a huge thing that I learned. I knew that like intellectually in my mind, but to confront that head on, to really experience that, it's a whole other thing. And that's like the main thing that I've taken from the experience, along with other things. But if you just approach every situation in life with that perspective, with the perspective that you have the power to change your perspective, shift your perspective at any point, you know, it's truly powerful and empowering. So after a while, the nausea became manageable. I got off the toilet, washed my hands and face, and made my way back to the circle. It was time for the third cup. I was hesitant at first, but I knew I had to do it, so I got in line and sipped it slowly. I went back to my seat, laid down, and reflected. I regretted eating the copious amounts of sushi I had for lunch. Yeah, I had like a shit ton of sushi because it was like there was free sushi at the catering thing, and that was before I knew I was going to do this. Obviously, I wouldn't have done that. But whatever. I dozed in and out of sleep for a while, every now and then observing what others were doing. Some were laying down, some were bent over their vomit bucket, some were meditating. Some were also kind of standing around and dancing, and I think at a certain point everyone was just sitting though when it got really late at night. Every now and then you would hear like people crying, and it was nice to hear though, just like it was just a safe space to express whatever you wanted, you know, and just be vulnerable. Because we were all freaking acting like babies at a certain point. Not that it's a bad thing, but we are still babies. We are all still babies. So yeah, I was dozing in and out of sleep. I was still a bit nauseated at this point, so I emptied out a bit more of the contents of my tummy and then finally fell asleep. We woke up at 7 a.m. the next morning, all in a daze. I felt very strange, and I thought, did that really just happen last night? All in all, I realized that discomfort is necessary for growth. You need to feel discomfort, uncomfortable, to grow. Yeah, there is peace in discomfort, if only you just surrender. Discomfort and feeling the unfamiliar is essential for growth. I'm being redundant at this point, but yeah, just let that seep in. I realized that ayahuasca will not fix your problems or trauma, but it will shine a light on them. So it's a tool, like anything else, that shows you what you fear, what you're penting up, and it allows you to express them physically in whatever way you want to, really, through tears, through crying, through yelling, through screaming. I don't think anyone screamed that night, but there was some people who were more vocal than others, and I was definitely more one of the vocal ones when I was on my hands and knees, just like rocking back and forth and feeling all these emotions come up. Like I said, like sadness, anger, frustration, disappointment. I mean, but also even like happiness and joy, and just like coming up in waves through my body, and it was just moaning and crying, and it's definitely a release. But oddly enough, I felt kind of, I wouldn't say shitty the next morning, but like really off, probably partially because of the sleep deprivation. But I mean, obviously, because I just went through a lot physically and emotionally, and I just needed some time to kind of reflect on what the fuck just happened. Because after that, I was like, why did I do? Not really why did I do that. I know why. I know that I wanted to do it for a long time. I learned about what DMT was in high school. Yeah. Through my friend Andreas, and he's saying DMT, and I'm like, oh my god, DMT, those are my initials. And so that's when I started my research, and I was like, I need to do this at some point, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to do it, like book a flight to Brazil and do it. I'm just gonna allow the opportunity to come to me, and like I was saying earlier, it came to me the next day. It was just freaking ridiculous. So all in all, yeah, I think I pretty much discussed everything. That, I mean, fear is an illusion. Like I was saying at one point, all the fears and discomforts, all the fears and truths that came up to me, it was just like, I was just laughing at all of them, all the things, the illusions that I just find myself in every day. You know, they're all illusions, they're not real. And I'm still like struggling with that, because we're human, we're so ingrained and conditioned to feel like not good enough. And not allowing yourself to be fully who you are because we're ashamed of who we are. Wow. I think everyone has some form of shame that still needs to be. I mean, I definitely do. And yeah, there's still a lot of shame I have to work through. But this experience definitely helped. So, there's that.